This is the final session of the day, and I hope you enjoyed the PaaS Summit this year and have, gotten a taste of it. How many first-timers here? Wow, okay. You're not a first-timer, I know. Good. So please silence your cell phones. This will be the last time you hear this week. Please go out and explore all that PaaS has to offer. I know everybody has been really enthusiastic about presenting this one, but I also always think that they fail on the last part, namely the volunteering. So get involved with your local community. There's a lot of offerings, but it's all only possible if people rally up around it. So please engage in your local community and see what PaaS has to offer there. My name is Jens. I'm from Denmark. I have been working with Microsoft BI since 2003. I've been in various sectors: retail, logistics, healthcare, government, and so on. I've worked with analysis services since 2004. SQL Server before that, relational engine, and then moved into Power BI and Tabular, as that came out. I also do a lot of Azure stuff for the company, and PowerShell and IoT is some kind of a hobby for me. I hope we can integrate that into the business at some point, but that's something I fiddle around with. You can reach me on Twitter, and my email will also be available in the slides. So please do contact me if you have any questions. Just a little bit about the company that I work with. We do retail BI, and those are some of our customers. Some of them you may know, and some of them you may not know. We have both local clients and global clients. Anyone have a guess on why this one is here?
You work with them?
No, not them. No, I don't. But it's actually the only enterprise you will see in this session. So this will be very much an introduction to the REST API of Power BI and see how can you get going with that. Nothing on how to actually incorporate that in your enterprise solution, right? So that's just to set the settings of this session. We'll start off with a disclaimer on what is not covered in the session, then a little bit about what is a REST API in general, and then somewhat about C# and PowerShell, and onto, actually I think I've swapped 3 and 4, so we will go from a REST API into a Power BI REST API, and some C# and PowerShell on how we can actually invoke the REST API. Then some demos, and a little bit about applications of the REST API, various products out there. And then I've also incorporated the REST API in a little bot demo at the end called Cortuna. And finally, we will go on to resources. I'm happy to take any questions during the session, so just raise your hand and we'll talk about it when it's there. We can have questions at the end also, and I will be available offline after the session as well. So, beyond the scope of this session, management of users and groups and reports, also how to set up the applications that we will be using in an enterprise solution to authenticate to the Power BI REST API. Then also you will need at some point some code to actually invoke the REST API, and code repositories and such are not covered in this session. All good? All right, so what is a REST API? And this is the kind of technical scope of what a REST API should actually adhere to. And I'm not going to go into details on each of the bullets, just to say that for the Power BI REST API, the Power BI team is actually taking care of all of this for you. So what you end up with are the endpoints that we will go through later on, and you don't have to worry about client-server architecture, cacheability, layered systems, and so on. That has all been taken care of by the Power BI team, right? So this is only if you want to go in and build your own REST API that these are getting interesting. But what's interesting about a REST API is the anatomy of a request. So obviously, we have to have an endpoint, URL of some sort. And for the Power BI REST API, it's this URL, either version 1 or version 2. We have to expose some methods. So an HTTP request can have different methods. It can either be get, post, delete, which are covered in this session, and not covered are patch, put, connect, options, and trace, which are all valid methods in HTTP requests. Also, headers will be a part of the request initially, so you can assign authentication, content type, and so on. And then finally, the data. So if you want to put something, some payload to the REST API, you do it through the body of the request, and that's typically JSON. HTTP methods like get are used to retrieve representations in the underlying system of the API. So the endpoint is actually pointing to some kind of code that goes deeper into the system, into a database or file storage or whatever is underlying there, and retrieves what you're requesting. We'll see that in more detail later on. A post is when you want to create something. So you can actually, through the URL endpoint, create an entity in the service that you're connecting to. So you can enrich or create data through the Power BI API. You can also use put to replace something or create, depending on if it's there already or not. And you can update. Those are variants that you will have to look up in the Power BI REST API documentation on which type of method you're going to use in the different scenarios. It's very easily distinguishable in the documentation, so don't worry, don't sweat it. Finally, delete, and you can also delete stuff. So you might want to, well, this one maybe not expose it to the entire business, because like you could get into trouble for that. So some of them are safe. So applying that request multiple times would lead you to the same state. Some are idempotent. But that's actually the one. Applying them multiple times will result in the same state. And the safe is that you don't change the state of the objects. Then get and post are cacheable, so you can actually query into a cache rather than the underlying data. So that's just something to have in mind. So the endpoint is what we actually fire our HTTP request against. We have what type of method it is. The endpoint can be the same, but the method can differ. And then the outcome of the request is different. The headers, again, for authentication purposes and whatever return type you would like. Some can return JSON, some can return XML, CSV, and some. So you can actually also put that in there, what kind of output you would like back. And then finally the body, the JSON object with whatever changes you want to have made or updated or deleted. So just to get going with an example, we have here an example of a REST API endpoint, api.example.com, and we have an endpoint on device management and managed devices. If we create an HTTP request with the method get, we will get all devices. That's the mindset you have to put into this. If we do a post, we can create a new device, but we also have to establish the body of the request. But as you can see, the endpoint is actually identical. So we actually query the same URL, but with a different method and a different payload. So either we post a payload or we get something back. Also, the nomination or the naming convention here is that so you /device management /managed devices /an ID, and you get a single device. And if you have or change the method into put, you can actually update a device by that ID. Delete also works with this one as you assign the ID at the end of the URL. So you see the difference between the post and the put here. We can actually put an update up with the specific ID, and post is used to create the device that we are currently looking for. REST API versioning is usually done like this. So the version of the API is a part of the endpoint. So at some point you have to, via the URL, establish that I'm actually looking for version 1 or 1.1. But the endpoint is similar in how it's comprised. And that has many advantages. You can do a smooth transition of some of the methods in an API while still being able to maintain the old ones in the old version. Questions so far? No? Okay. All good? So, authentication and authorization. Obviously, REST APIs often require specific credentials. Some don't, and you can actually just request data off of those APIs without any login or certificates or something like that. And those APIs you can actually start working with in Power BI just, right now. And some, like the Power BI REST API, actually do require you to authenticate against the service. Usually, if there's an anonymous login, if we can call it that, you can't really do the create, drop, update, stuff like that. It's just a get method operation for that. So authorization, we will not go into how to do it here. I have a number of resources to get you going with that. There's some documentation on authorization and how to set it up with C#. Also, there's a really nice way of registering an application, which is what you will need to do all this against the Power BI REST API. If you want to register straight out, there's a dev.powerbi.com/apps, which is a brilliant guide in, I think, 3 or 4 steps, where you can actually set up an application in your tenant and get going from there. DynaCube has a video on it as well, so you're covered there. Yep?
When you connect via just using an account, is that
So the question is, do I need a Power BI license for the user which I'm connecting to? I actually don't know that. The example here is that you actually create an application within your Active Directory, which is a SPN, a traditional SPN connection, and not really a user.
Because I can also do the, well, I can do the APIs with mine.
Yes.
Traditional API. So would that require Pro?
I actually don't know. We have to look it up afterwards. So the question is, do I need Pro? And I don't know. I'm not sure. Sorry?
Technically, you're not sharing, so...
No, exactly. So it should be, well, my gut feeling is that you don't need a Pro. But so if we go through the wizard in there, you can actually select specifically what kind of permissions you would want to grant for the application connecting with the REST API. So you can actually allow it or disallow it to create content. You can it read datasets, dashboards, and so on. So you can be pretty precise in how you want to assign different applications to actually interact with the Power BI tenant. So what is the Power BI REST API? We've talked about a REST API being a way to communicate with some system that has some data in it. And obviously, Power BI has some data in it. And the Power BI REST API is actually for the kind of metadata on the data, if you want to look at it that way. So we can actually manipulate dashboards, datasets, reports, but not really the physical data that we're showing in the reports. So this slide is not the complete list of groupings in the Power BI REST API. They keep adding now with data flows and so on. But these are some of the ones we are going to touch on in this session. Some admin stuff where the user you connect with actually have to be a tenant admin in order to retrieve all of the workspaces or groups in the tenant, not only your own, but everyone else's. That's actually possible. But that's not possible for the layman connecting through the API. Then you can query on the available features in the tenant. You can check on capacity settings. Do I push apps automatically? And all of these settings you can check up. You can do stuff with dashboards, datasets, embed token, all of that stuff. But you need to be aware that there's a different set of APIs for the Power BI embedded. So you have to go look for that if you are on the embedded side. So the dreaded part, anyone here, or how many are actually, have been coding PowerShell or C#? Wow, good, great. Okay, good. Because I've presented this and no hands showed, and the next part would just be, black magic gibberish stuff. So it's good. I think most will follow along. So PowerShell is like a Swiss Army knife, and in my opinion, C# is a bigger Swiss knife. But in the sense of the Power BI REST API, it doesn't really matter. The preferred tool of choice will be the one you're proficient with. You can do almost the same in both C# as well as in PowerShell. I have demos in this session on both, so whatever your flavor is will get you going. This is just an example of a PowerShell REST API request. And as you can, this podium is actually not that good for Zoom it, or maybe I can go down the. So in PowerShell, there is a built-in commandlet, invoke REST method. So you can actually just see that I defined the method, the URL, which I'm actually defining up here, credentials right here, and credentials come from somewhere else. That's the beauty of PowerShell. You can actually do that in a completely different script and still have the credentials in state in this script, but you're in the context of that session. So the body of this request is actually defined right here, and also I'd like the output into an output CSV file. So this would be a typical PowerShell REST API request. The C# edition is a bit more compact. As you can see again, the HTTP client is something that comes with C#. We just define the URL, set some header values, and then off we go. In here, with the client, get async URL parameters and result. So, easy peasy, right? Well, let's see some PowerShell demos. And we're good to go. This one. So I have an ongoing issue that I'm trying to solve with Microsoft. So I'm logging in a bit differently, and I'm not showing you that on screen. So I have a tenant where I have an issue with creating the, well, not creating the application, but actually granting admin consent. So an administrator of the Active Directory has to grant the consent that this application can actually do what I am asking it to do. And that's not working for our tenant. So just imagine that I'm logging in with the enterprise application that you can set up, and it would be almost the same as this. So now I logged in. The script here is actually creating credentials based on a username and a secure password. And then I downloaded the official Microsoft PowerShell commandlets for Power BI, so I can get a PBI auth token, and I explicitly say that it's this tenant that I want the token from, and with these credentials. Now I get a token back, and I can add that to my headers section here, like this, and I'm good to go. So my authentication is now in the headers. The token is in my HTTP request to the Power BI REST API, and it can actually validate, okay, it's the same token as I just assigned for this user, so I'm good. So our first example in here would be maybe the get available features. So if we look at that URL from the Power BI REST API, we can actually see, so the api.powerbi.com version 1/myorg/available features. That's the URL that we're trying to create a request for. I then have a built-in PowerShell commandlet, invoke REST method, URI, which is the one above, the headers, which are the ones that I just created in my login script, and then I define that this is a get method, and the PowerShell way of actually just dotting into an attribute, I can wrap it up in parentheses and then dot features. I then get features into this variable, and I print that out. So let's see how this. So down here, the result of this query is actually resulting in this table name of the feature, the state, and the extended state. So what if I wanted a specific feature? That's also available to me. I can actually, because the API is actually exposing this, set that I want this feature name specifically in this request, and I set up the request in the same way, invoke REST method, URI, headers, and it's a get, and I only want the state. So when I hit F5, it actually returned the state down here, enabled. So you might already see the functionality or the power that this actually brings to the business. I can have something automatically, constantly check that no one actually changed the settings on the tenant. I can validate that they are as they should be. But it doesn't stop there. So we can go on to, let's say, get groups. Let's see. We have the Power BI REST API query up here. And as you can notice, the last part of the URL is groups. And then I fire that request away and then say, I only want the ID, name, and is on dedicated capacity attribute, and I only want the ones that actually are on a dedicated capacity. I then print out all the groups, and then I export that into a text file for me to load somewhere else. Oh. So it says the file already exists. Let's see. So let's run that again. You see, all these are actually workspaces that are on our tenant that are all on the dedicated capacity. So let's go look again for the file. It was recreated, and here I get the output. So I can actually dump data out of the tenant in order to track changes, who did what, and so on. Let's see this one. Get group users. So we can actually track who are the users that can access this specific group. We can say, so for this workspace specifically, we would like to, query the groups that has this name, and we then get a group ID in return, and we would like to see if there are any dashboards in this workspace. I'm not sure, they keep changing. Oh, okay, yeah, so we can see the attributes on the workspaces. We actually get how are they, well, the embed URL and so on. We can get that information out of. One of the more nifty features is the refresh of datasets. Now, there was a brief moment in Power BI history where this was a backdoor into beating the 8 refreshes a day, but they closed that down now because, people found out. But I can actually, through the REST API, refresh a dataset in the service with just a PowerShell script. So let's go and see if we can find the dataset. So I have this client here, and we want to get up. Let's see if that is still in there. This podium was not built for a mouse. So I'm logging into the portal to just show you the workspace. And we have quite a lot. So I'm in with the wrong, no. So we have this dataset, the Catman Pap browser. And this is the one we are actually looking for here. If I know the direct ID of the dataset, I can actually just copy the URL up here. Then I get the group ID, and I also get the dataset ID. So we can skip all of the querying for the dataset's ID and for the workspace ID in PowerShell if we know that this doesn't change. But if you delete and recreate workspace or dataset, the IDs will change over time, right? So you want to, well, maybe go by name and rather than go by ID. So let's see if we can find this one. And now you can see over here that the refresh icon is actually kicking off. So now I'm, with PowerShell, actually refreshing the dataset in the tenant. I can also go in and look in the settings and see refresh history in here. And as you can see, usually it's scheduled, but now this time it was of type on demand. So it's actually as if I was in the portal and clicked on refresh dataset. Questions? Yeah.
So does this bypass the whole gateway? Is that accurate?
Bypass gateway?
Gateway? So we have to set up gateways to communicate with.
The gateway.
You're just directly going to the service.
Yeah, but the gateway is between the dataset and the data. And this REST API is actually querying the Power BI tenant. So you should see that as you're on the Power BI tenant side with the Power BI REST APIs. So you're not on the data side of your setup. So you don't need to go through the gateway to do this. It's mostly the same for all of the other PowerShell demos I have in here. I can go in and see some statistics on connection details for different data sets set up in some kind of, this data model here, Catman Next, what is that pointing to? And I can verify that it's actually pointing to whatever I need it to be pointing to. There is, however, one thing that you need to take in consideration with this. You can do changes to these connection strings, but there is currently an ongoing bug with the Azure Analysis Services. If you connect to that and you change the connection to a different server with the PowerShell API, and after that, open Analyze in Excel, the connection will still be to the old Analysis Services instance. the team has been made aware of this, and they are working on fixing it, obviously. Just so you know. All right. Anything else we want to see in here? I can actually also do a takeover on one of the datasets. And I know I've been trying to locate, there's a GitHub repository by Bob Duffy, at least that's what I'm told, where he has put together a PowerShell collection that actually does all of these nice little added things for you when you upload Pbix files with datasets in. Oh, we see you're not the owner, let's set you as the owner, and stuff like that. So I'm trying to find the link for that Git repository to put in the slides, and I'll put them in as soon as I know it, so you can see them on the past site. But here we are looking for this particular workspace and this dataset. So let's go look for that. Here I can see who's the owner of that. Let's see. Oh, so I'm already the owner of that. And the reason why you see this one is that we actually, it's 1 o'clock in the night and we shut down our servers. So it's not actually able to connect to the service behind. Trying to save some money. So if I wasn't the owner, which I am currently, you can see that in here there would be a button. We can try and find something else that I'm, maybe this one. Oh, that's an app. Let me see. This one. Here. So there's a button, takeover. And what was this? This was AlaDK, so we can actually just change this. And now I've taken ownership of this dataset with the REST API, right? I can also extract reports from the API, and I mean, it should be obvious to all of you that actually we can do quite a lot with the Power BI REST API. There are some minor things that are not possible yet. I think I have a list in here. There. Yeah, the update of datasets, datasource that I told you about, and tiles. We can't really add tiles to dashboard yet through the Power BI REST API. But, well, Microsoft is doing its best to keep up, and they are releasing features in Power BI like no other tool on earth. So, I mean, it is a tough job keeping up with this. All right, on to the applications of the Power BI REST API. Have someone thought of something useful for this other than the Power BI portal? And there are. Risa, who was a speaker at this conference as well, has done a little tool called Power BI Helper. And you can actually, with that tool, do all kind of other stuff, but you can also connect to your Power BI objects, workspaces, dashboards, and so on. So I recommend you go to this site and download that tool. Also, for those of you who work in organizations where you actually are applying DevOps to your deployment and integration, there are some plugins in the marketplace for Azure DevOps where you can actually deploy Pbix files to different tenants and update or refresh dataset. And there are a number of operations you can do with that plugin into your pipeline. So that's one good option for the Power BI REST API as well. So you can see upload the Pbix, create workspaces, delete workspaces, update connections, and so on. So it's all in that, and it's free. You can, if you do Power BI, or if you do Azure DevOps, you can actually just go to the marketplace, install it in your Azure DevOps tenant, and you're good to go. So on the way over, I thought, can I do something with the Power BI REST API that I would be able to demo? I actually demoed it in my Lightning talk yesterday, but then I thought, okay, I'll demo it here as well, just to show you that you can actually easily incorporate that into your daily routines. So I built a little bot called Cortuna, and we can have a look at what that's all about. So Microsoft has, out of the box, 3 bot templates. One of them is called an Echo bot, and it's actually just, you fire up the template and you're good to go. As soon as you hit F5, you can actually have the bot reply back what you said. And that's actually a good starting point, right? Because all we had to do was actually to implement the Power BI REST API behind the scenes, and also the state of the bot. So my bot is, given the time, a very simple one. I can do a few operations. Unfortunately, I didn't get enough time to actually do the upload of the Power BI file, but I can do that with PowerShell, and we will see that in a second. So what also comes with the bot framework is a bot framework emulator. So I don't have to actually deploy this bot into any service somewhere. I can actually emulate it on my own machine. So once I fire up this project, which consists of, as you can see in the corner here, it consists of my Cortuna bot project and also a PBI API.NET Core what's it called? Class library. So it outputs a class library which I can include in the Cortuna bot framework application, and then I can connect to it with this emulator. So I open bot and I get a URL. I've already been there testing it, so I just connect to it. Oh, I need to do one thing actually. And again, that's back to the fact that I shouldn't have deleted that link. The fact that I can't get my enterprise application to work, I need to copy in the token. So I can get that token by going to, actually we can maybe have a look at that. We can go to the Microsoft Docs and see how all the API features are actually working. So now this one is the get available features by feature name. You can see the URL here, and you just replace the feature name, and the list of feature names is actually in the documentation as well. So everything is in here, and you can actually also test it. So let's go up and hit the try it button, and then I log in as whoever I want to log in as. And as you can see, maybe I want to refresh this one to actually be sure that I'm logged in. And then it actually exposes my token, and I can copy that into my application. So this is actually, or this is a workaround for the issue on our tenant, and this is not the way it should be. So let's see, we have in here the PBI API client. We want to go to the token. Obviously, this should be able to connect on its own. But now we are forcing it to return the token that I just got from the service. And that expires actually in an hour, so that's why the token I got yesterday doesn't work now. So you have 1 hour, and then you need to refresh your tokens. Okay. Obviously, there has to be an error.
When you said result, you put the equal sign, so you have to just go right to the beginning string?
Okay. So it built, we're good to go. Start up this one again. And now you can see this is my, well, it doesn't really need a welcome page or anything, but this is, I know now that the bot has started. And I can, over here, I have options to restart the conversation. And I can actually say or tell the bot if I want to restart as a new user or as the same user, just reconnect. But I'm just reconnecting. And now I just need to say hi. And the bot replies to me, hi, my name is Contuna. What's your name? Oh, okay. I can type in my name. Oh, so it presents me with a different set of options here. I can actually add a workspace. I can add a dashboard to that workspace. I can import a PBIX file. That could be anything in here. I could even, well, I've presented it as I have to hit 0, 1, or 2. I could also have a conversation about it. So the bot would actually use natural language processing, AI, behind the scenes to find out what it is that I want. But this one is a simple one. So I just want to add a workspace. I type 0 and says, OK, please enter a name for the workspace. And we'll call this pass regular session, like this. And now it says, OK, so I created your workspace with this ID. So you can see that for any future use, the bot now knows what current we are working on, and it can actually reference the group ID directly if we wanted to do that. We can go to the service to actually see if, where's my browser? It's there. No, I actually need this. So to go to the Power BI service, I want to sign in. This one. And obviously, I should have done this before to show you that I'm not cheating, so we can do it all again. So now we see a different, I'll just delete this one. Delete workspace, like that. We can restart the conversation. That's why it's a bit sketchy, because I have to do it all over again. My name is Jens. I want to do a workspace. And now if we look at what workspaces are actually in there, we can see there's nothing named pass something. So we're good to go. I want it to be pass Summit 2019. like that. Adding Workspace, Workspace created, and refresh. And now we have a past Summit 2019 Workspace in our tenant. So if we want to go into that one, we can see here that there are no dashboards. So I want to add a dashboard. So I can just type 1. And please type in a name for the dashboard. And this one is called Marcus's dashboard. Like that. Put a pie chart? Yeah, okay, so we see here it created an ID as well, so now I know the exact location of the dashboard. And usually the Power BI portal would just pop up and go into that dashboard, but for some reason I need to refresh. So there we see Marcus dashboard. Obviously there's nothing in there, no pie charts for Marcus this time, but I think he's happy about that. So the final step would obviously be to upload a Pbix file. So now I need to go into, not this one, but let me see. I need to find the right file. In the lightning talks, maybe? Nope. Oh. So here I am actually using the login Power BI PowerShell commandlet, like this. I'm logging in as me, and now I'm actually importing a Pbix file into the service. So I created a Pbix file on the Board Geek game site, so popular board games rated, and I put that in a test Pbix file on my drive, and then I can actually upload that into, no. So why is that? The group ID. So you have to go in and fetch the group ID from the newly created workspace here, like that. Let's try again. And there you see, we get a GUID back from the HTTP request or the commandlet request, which is in this case a sign that, okay, so the service already recognized I have a data set up here, right? And we want to go to that, view data set. You can see there's a simple model, Board Game Geek, it's called. And if we want to go see the report, which was with the Pbix file, we can do that. And there's a list of board games rated by, I don't know how many users, but we can drill into that. And that's how we would upload through the bot. Again, if you think back to the bot, there's actually an option in here to interact with the REST API, both through text, but also with files. So we can actually also upload scripts if we wanted to, or something like that. So that's one application of the Power BI REST API to create a bot for your users in the business, so you don't have to talk to them. But maybe not the right way to go about it. Questions on that? Nope. Okay. Let's see. So this is actually maybe a bit too short, but I think we can round up this session. Some interesting notes. The slides will be available on the past site, so don't worry. I will also put in the GitHub repository whenever I find it with the PowerShell commandlets. But Rui Romano has done some commandlets, the Power BI PS for PowerShell, and Risa has obviously the Power BI helper, which I mentioned earlier. But there's not a lot going on with the Power BI API publicly, so to speak. They have a well-documented site, Microsoft, on this set of features, but it's not like they're pushing the API on the side. It's rarely mentioned in the features that they, what are the new features of this month. Remember to evaluate all of the sessions. I know there's prizes involved in that, and you have until November 15th. In my opinion, it's better to do it now because or you forget. But then, thank you. I can add in my email at this slide later on. Yeah. No, the thing with are we off the air? Or the live TV off? Or yeah, good. Because then I can say that the past slides have been a bit of a trouble to get integrated into the existing slides. Let's see. Like that. So. Sorry? Oh, speaker name. Yeah, it's me, speaker name.
I can't watch the recording to get this.
Like that. There you go.